We're going to switch gears now and turn to a new documentary about Princess Diana, where we hear from her older sister and the questions she still has about the night Diana died 20 years ago. Adrienne Bankert here with that story. Good morning, Adrienne.
Good morning to you too, George. It's not often we hear from Diana's sister, but she and others in the family are commemorating her death, speaking candidly about their grief from 20 years ago.
In a stunning twist that has rocked the royal family, Princess Diana's sister has come forward with explosive new claims, and she's naming names. During a secret press conference, she declared the crash that killed Diana was no accident, but a calculated hit, orchestrated from within the highest ranks of the palace. Armed with leaked documents, witness testimonies, and Diana's own haunting words, she pointed the finger at Charles, Camilla, and royal operatives. Her voice, once silent, now threatens to unravel decades of secrecy. And as the monarchy braces for the fallout, the world demands just one thing: the truth. Cold open. The shocking confession. The room was tense. Journalists, activists, and royal watchers packed into a small, anonymous venue in London. And then she walked in. Diana's sister, her face pale, her voice steady but trembling with resolve. "The truth cannot stay buried another day," she said. And just like that, the story we thought we knew was shattered. In front of flashing cameras and stunned reporters, she made her bombshell statement. She knew who ordered Diana's death. There was no hesitation, no ambiguity. She referenced long hidden files and leaked documents, papers the public had never seen, buried deep in archives and private intelligence reports. And then came the moment that silenced the room. She looked up and declared, "This was not an accident. This was orchestrated. And I know by whom." The names she hinted at were seismic: Charles, Camilla, the royal machinery. She didn't shout, didn't cry, she simply revealed. Calm, controlled, devastating. The crowd sat frozen as she detailed why she stayed silent for so long. Family pressure, fear, the weight of secrets. But after years of regret, she said something in her had snapped. "I cannot live another day knowing the world mourns without the truth. Diana deserves justice, and I will be her voice." And just like that, the monarchy's most painful chapter was reopened. This time, from within the family itself. Diana's relationship with Camilla. It wasn't just a rivalry. It was war, quietly waged inside gilded walls. According to Diana's sister, the late princess was tormented by Camilla's growing presence, not just in Charles's life, but within the very institution that once promised her protection. She held up one of Diana's old diaries, handwritten, raw, and heartbreakingly detailed. In one entry, Diana wrote, "Camilla is poisoning everything. My marriage, my name, my peace." That wasn't metaphor. That was a desperate woman recording a slow, cruel betrayal. The sister said Diana confronted Charles more than once, demanded space, distance, a stop to the affair that was already public knowledge behind closed doors. But instead of protection, Diana was increasingly isolated. Witnesses claim palace insiders whispered to Diana that Camilla would never back down, and that if Diana didn't step aside, things would get messy. A warning? Or a threat? After the separation, something even stranger happened. Camilla's public visibility increased rapidly. She was spotted at events, quietly introduced to palace staff, and began making more unofficial appearances with Charles. The transition was too smooth, the timing too perfect. The sister now says she believes that post-divorce period wasn't just about moving on, it was about removal. And Diana knew it. She confided in her sister. "They've made space for her. They just haven't figured out how to make me disappear." Now, looking back, the sister sees the signs not as warning shots, but as prelude. Warnings ignored. The night before. On the night before her death, Diana didn't feel safe. She didn't feel watched. She knew she was being watched. That's what she told her sister in a chilling late-night call that would become the final thread of a mystery still unraveling. According to the sister, Diana's voice was hushed, urgent. She said she felt like she was being followed again in Paris. "I think he's planning something, driving me into oblivion," she whispered. She didn't name names, but she didn't have to. The fear in her voice said enough. Hours later, Diana made a choice that still raises questions. She dismissed her usual Royal Standard security detail. The official line says it was a preference. Her sister believes it was a setup. Even more disturbing, an aide later came forward with a claim. Diana received a mysterious call that night. A voice warned her not to travel. But the call? It vanished. Deleted from records. Gone without explanation. And then came the final twist. Her driver was swapped out just hours before departure. Diana wasn't told. She didn't question it. She was tired, distracted, trying to protect her sons from relentless media attention. She trusted the system, and the system failed her. Her sister now believes it wasn't just failure. It was substitution. A key piece of the puzzle, hidden in plain sight. What was supposed to be just another trip through Paris became her last ride. Not by fate, but by design. Camilla's known influence. If Diana was the public's princess, Camilla was the palace's strategist. Diana's sister paints her as not just a rival, but a master manipulator, quietly moving through the corridors of power, always 2 steps ahead. According to former palace staff, Camilla had been lobbying for years, not just for her relationship, but for Diana's removal from public life. The sisters cited emails and memos, some recovered, others leaked, where Camilla allegedly demanded that Diana's international tours be cancelled or re-evaluated for royal appropriateness. One aide reported Camilla saying, "She's too risky for Charles's reign." Another chilling line, overheard by her own brother-in-law, claimed Camilla once muttered at a family function, "Her story ends soon." The sister didn't believe it then. She thought it was cruel talk, nothing more. But after Diana's death, and Camilla's meteoric rise, everything changed. Within months, Camilla's image was being polished. Her appearances softened. Her presence normalized. And all of it happened with such ease, such precision, that it felt rehearsed. The sister now believes Camilla's influence wasn't just personal. It was institutional. And her ability to maneuver, to disappear blame, to reshape herself from mistress to consort. It wasn't luck. It was strategy. And Diana? She was in the way. What once seemed like coincidence now feels like orchestration. And Camilla, the sister warns, wasn't just standing by when Diana fell. She was waiting for the silence. Charles's possible motivation. What would make a future king look the other way? According to Diana's sister, Charles had every reason to want his past erased. Diana's global popularity wasn't just a shadow, it was a threat. And as long as she lived, he could never fully claim the narrative. She recounted private conversations, late-night fears Diana shared. "He promised me protection," Diana once whispered. "Then let me go." At the time, her sister thought it was sadness talking. Now, she hears it as a warning. Behind palace walls, internal memos circulated, describing how Diana's media presence was interfering with royal plans. Her charity tours, her emotional interviews, her raw humanity. It made Charles look stiff, out of touch. There was no contest, and the palace knew it. The sister alleges that Charles feared he could never remarry cleanly, while Diana remained a constant global force. The comparison would always haunt him. Camilla's image would never survive in the same spotlight. And then came the most haunting piece. A source from within the royal press office said Charles once remarked, "She'll always eclipse us, until she doesn't." He never gave a real interview after her death. He didn't challenge the inconsistencies. He simply moved on, quietly, quickly. To Diana's sister, that silence was the clearest message of all. It wasn't grief. It was closure. His, not hers. The crash that wasn't an accident. If Diana's death was truly a tragic accident, then why does every technical detail tell a different story? Diana's sister isn't just relying on emotion anymore. She's bringing evidence. And what she reveals about the crash that night in Paris is forcing the world to rethink everything. She begins with the basics, the car itself. The brakes, she claims, were tampered with. According to a private security firm hired years ago by an anonymous benefactor, the brake line showed signs of artificial corrosion. The seatbelts, oddly enough, malfunctioned only on Diana's side. Even more bizarre, her usual insistence on seatbelt use somehow went ignored that night. Diana was meticulous. She never forgot, her sister insists. Then there's the scene. CCTV footage should have captured every moment. But in an incredible stroke of coincidence, every camera at the entrance to the Pont de l'Alma tunnel had mysteriously gone dark. Not one image, not 1 second of film showing the moment of impact. And when the sister pressed for answers, she was told the cameras were malfunctioning due to maintenance. She doesn't believe that for a second. Even more chilling are the private forensics reports. She obtained them through back channels, and what they describe doesn't match a typical high-speed crash. The vehicle's path, angle of collision, and the state of the wreckage all raised questions. Questions that were never answered, just buried. But what shocked her most was a shadow in the background. Witnesses, she claims, saw a third vehicle, trailing and then vanishing. A white Fiat Uno that was never officially found. Some believe it was a plant, used to cause confusion or directly interfere with the Mercedes. Her voice shakes as she recounts it. This wasn't a tragedy. It was precision. It was timing. It was removal. She calls it what she believes it is, murder disguised as chaos. And suddenly, everything starts to make a horrifying kind of sense, Palace. Cover up. The truth didn't just die in that tunnel. It was buried. That's what Diana's sister now claims, and she has the documents to back it up. What happened after the crash wasn't an investigation. It was a sanitized cover-up, orchestrated by those desperate to protect the throne. She presents memos, real, dated, signed, that paint a disturbing picture. Internal communications from palace aides told officials to protect the monarchy, not the narrative. What followed was a flood of redacted files, muted interviews, and an immediate clampdown on French investigators. According to her sources, the British government even applied diplomatic pressure to stall further inquiry. MI6, she says, played a quiet but powerful role. She spoke to one retired operative who admitted off the record that a black ops strategy had been activated. Their job? To erase any trace that could connect the crash to royal instruction. Diana had been monitored, her movements tracked, conversations recorded. The tools were in place, and then, suddenly, everything went silent. And what about the media? Where were the stories? Why didn't the footage ever surface? She has an answer. It was taken, removed, sanitized. She claims footage showing suspicious movement near the crash site was collected by Palace-connected handlers and never seen again. The sister doesn't cry. She doesn't raise her voice. She just lays it out, piece by damning piece. This wasn't a tragedy covered up. It was a crime pre-approved. And the Crown didn't just look away. It gave permission. Underground testimonies. When the Crown speaks, people obey. But not everyone. Diana's sister now brings forward two anonymous palace insiders who say the quiet has lasted too long. And what they've revealed only deepens the darkness. The first is an aide, still working in a senior position. Through encrypted communication, they told the sister that Camilla advised Charles to let Diana drive herself into death. The phrase, they say, wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. A warning masked as advice. A suggestion disguised as inevitability. The second witness is even more damning. A former driver for the royal family, who, years later, confessed to something chilling. He said he was told to delay outside the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Not long, just minutes, but enough to alter timing. Enough to create vulnerability. Enough to make sure everything lined up. And that's not all. Several drivers in the Royal Motor Pool reportedly noticed a pattern in the days before Diana's trip. Her assigned routes were changed last minute, always approved by someone higher up. Always without her input. The sister says these stories, these whispers, are too consistent to ignore, too detailed to dismiss. And she believes they've stayed silent not out of guilt, but out of fear. Fear of the firm, fear of what the truth might cost. But now, with her confession making waves around the globe, these insiders are cracking. The silence, she says, is ending, and the palace can no longer hide behind protocol and press releases. Because people are finally speaking, and what they're saying is terrifying. Legal and political ramifications. For years, this was a family tragedy. Now, it's a constitutional crisis. The sisters' revelations haven't just shaken royal watchers. They've ignited a political firestorm. MPs are calling for hearings. Legal experts are warning of international criminal implications, and the monarchy is suddenly standing on dangerously thin ice. She warns that this isn't just scandal, it's potential legal warfare. If her documents are validated, and many have already passed initial scrutiny, then palace officials could face charges of conspiracy, obstruction, and criminal negligence. Behind the scenes, government figures are scrambling. French prosecutors, long pressured into silence, are considering reopening the case. The implications are enormous, not just for the royal family, but for international diplomacy. The UK government is trying to play neutral, but whispers suggest some in Parliament want the monarchy stripped of its moral mandate if these claims are verified. One anonymous MP was quoted saying, "We cannot crown a man suspected of covering up his ex-wife's death." The sister says she didn't set out to destroy the monarchy, but she won't back down. If justice threatens the crown, then maybe the crown should feel threatened. And now, the public wants answers. Not more smiles, not more silence. Just the truth. For the first time since 1997, the royal family isn't just under scrutiny, they're under suspicion. Public outrage and media storm. By morning, the world was on fire. Hashtags exploded across social media. After justice for Diana, hashtag crash conspiracy. Who ordered the crash? What began as a quiet confession had turned into the biggest royal crisis of the century. And the public? They weren't just angry, they were relentless. Major networks broke programming. Front pages carried Diana's sister's face beside phrases like explosive claims and palace panic. Protests ignited outside royal residences. Flowers, letters, posters filled the gates at Kensington once again. But this wasn't grief. It was outrage. And it was global. Celebrities joined in, some posting Diana tributes, others calling for a full international inquiry. Activists and former royal aides backed the sister. One former palace butler simply said, "She's telling the truth. I saw it coming." Of course, not everyone supported her. Royal loyalists pushed back. Newspapers tried to discredit her. But every attempt only added fuel to the fire. The harder they fought her, the more people believed her. The crown had weathered storms before, but this was a hurricane. And at its center was a grieving sister, demanding justice. Not vengeance, not attention, just the truth. What was once a whisper has become a roar, and the monarchy is now staring down the full weight of the people's fury. William and Harry respond. As the storm raged outside the palace walls, all eyes turned to the two men most affected, the sons Diana left behind. For years, Prince William and Prince Harry stayed largely silent about the night that changed their lives forever. But now, with their aunt speaking out and the world demanding answers, they've been pulled into the center of a growing royal reckoning. It started with a whisper, then a leak. A private moment, caught on a hot mic, captured William murmuring to a close advisor, "She deserves the final word." Just 6 words, but they echoed through media channels like a bombshell. For the first time, it appeared William might support uncovering the truth, even if it meant turning against his own bloodline. Then came Harry. Excerpts from his memoir resurfaced, passages in which he praised Diana's sister as a voice of truth, unshaken by the throne. It was clear Harry had always harbored suspicions about the official story. Now, insiders claim he and William have been speaking privately, weighing the consequences of breaking with the firm to support a full inquiry. Sources say Camilla personally reached out to William, asking him to publicly dismiss the accusations, but he refused, not angrily, just firmly. The silence from the brothers had ended, and it wasn't coming back. Behind closed doors, the palace is reportedly fractured. Advisors are torn. Some urge containment. Others suggest getting ahead of the narrative before it consumes them all. But it's the prince's unity that's most powerful. For years, William and Harry have been divided by personal choices and public battles. But now, their shared love for their mother has brought them back together, not for revenge, but for truth. And with their support, Diana's sister isn't just a voice anymore. She's a movement. Camilla's public reaction. As the pressure mounted, the woman at the center of suspicion, Queen Camilla, was forced to do something she's rarely done in her royal life: respond. But the reaction was careful, calculated, and deeply controlled. In a brief statement released through palace channels, Camilla expressed shock and deep sadness at the circulating accusations. But notably, she stopped short of denying anything outright. There was no clarification, no reassurance, just a vague gesture of sorrow and silence. The backlash was immediate. Her public engagements were canceled indefinitely. Appearances at state dinners, charity visits, and televised addresses, all postponed with no explanation. Insiders said she had retreated to Balmoral, choosing isolation over confrontation. Some said she was unwell. Others whispered that she was preparing for something bigger. Meanwhile, her PR team spun the narrative that Diana's sister was still grieving, misguided by pain and confused by false leads. But the public wasn't buying it. Camilla's silence looked less like poise and more like panic. And then came the counterstrike. In response to the palace's attempts to discredit her, Diana's sister released another wave of documents, photos, transcripts, memos, each one more damning than the last. One email allegedly showed Camilla's staff discussing media strategy in case of Diana's sudden death. The date? 2 months before the crash. At that point, public support began to shift permanently. Even former critics of Diana's sister admitted this wasn't speculation anymore. It was evidence. And Camilla's silence? It was beginning to sound like guilt. The Queen had always been behind the curtain. But now, the curtain was on fire. Cliffhanger. Inquiry or implosion? The calls were deafening. Protesters filled streets. Journalists camped outside the palace. Former royals and government officials joined the chorus. There had to be an inquiry. And eventually, the pressure forced action. A formal investigation was announced, but immediately, the cracks began to show. The scope was limited. The terms vague. Key figures, including Camilla, were not required to testify. Diana's sister immediately denounced it as a smokescreen, not justice. She demanded a full, independent inquiry with international oversight. Anything less, she said, was an insult to Diana's legacy. Meanwhile, palace insiders whispered of chaos behind royal gates. Charles was reportedly livid, furious at the press, furious at the pressure, furious at his sons. According to one senior aide, he was even attempting to influence the inquiry's terms, limiting access to old documents and removing key witnesses from the list. But resistance was growing from inside too. William and Harry were no longer staying silent. Their joint message, released through a spokesperson, said it plainly. We support full transparency, whatever the cost. And that sentence landed like a thunderclap. For the first time, the heirs to the crown were questioning the very throne they were meant to protect. Behind the scenes, Camilla was preparing something of her own, a televised interview, a rare sit-down to share her side of the story. Palace strategists hoped it would humanize her, but others feared it would only fan the flames, especially if she refused to answer the one question no one could escape anymore. If not them, then who? That question now echoes across a nation, hanging in the air like smoke after an explosion. And with the monarchy teetering, one thing is certain. The era of silence is over. What happens next might be the end of the royal story as we know it. One sister's voice has shattered the silence, and nothing will be the same. As the monarchy faces growing backlash, the question now looms larger than ever. Will justice for Diana finally prevail, or will the palace bury the truth once again? The world is watching, and this time, it won't look away.